Under a ghostly, pale moon, the ocean pulsed with life. Shadows weaved through the thick mist, curling off the waves, spreading across the shore like tendrils of some restless beast. The rhythmic crashing of the waves filled the silence, each surge carving into the shore as if marking time itself. Amidst this desolate seascape, a dark, spectral figure emerged. Bezel Kai, the crow encrusted with barnacles and burdened with the weight of stories untold, limped along a winding serpentine path carved through the wet sands. His black feathers, slick and mottled, glistened in the moonlight, while a battered blue trench coat hung off him like a second skin, heavy and dripping with seawater. He clutched a dark book in his talons, its pages hummed with secrets known only to him. His one good eye, sharp and alive, caught glimpses of the ocean's reflection, while his other, a glass eye, glinted with an eerie blue fire that seemed to feed off the night. "Adapt or die, into the Bakasana woad," he muttered, his voice low and fervent, the words spilling from his beak in whispers that vanished as quickly as they were spoken. Each syllable embodied a mantra as old as the sea. The path beneath him resonated with each word, acknowledging the truth in his plea. With every step, the crashing of the waves aligned with his stride, amplifying his presence against the dark, starless void. His coat, slick and cold, trailed behind him, leaving a faint track in the damp sand that the tide hungrily swallowed up. "Caught in a web, adapt or die," he murmured, speaking to the shadows. His gaze swept along the path, sharp and darting. He veered off course, pulled by an unknown force towards scattered blocks of materia, relics half buried in the sand, gleaming with an otherworldly glow. "Adapt or die, add another, eat the seed," he croaked, his voice teetering between longing and despair. He paused, eyes narrowing as he looked out over the endless heaving ocean. His gaze was wild, feverish, searching for answers amidst the waves. "Adapt or die," he hissed through his beak. "Cut down the weeds, bake a story." The words were no longer spoken in soft murmurs of reverence. They carried a heavy meaning, perhaps even a prophecy. Bezel squinted into the distance, the horizon wavering in the dark light as if the night withheld its secrets. His feathers ruffled and his glass eye shifted, watching the horizon accusingly. "It piles up everywhere," he whispered, solemnly, his voice tinged with an old grief, "though we would not be pleased." Ahead of him, the beach sprawled in eerie quiet, littered with ancient blocks poking out from the sands, mimicking bones from a forgotten graveyard. Strange symbols adorned their surfaces, alchemical symbols, an ancient language etched into each one, marking water, a hollow circle, and checkered patterns that broke up the moonlight falling on them. Bezel stopped, his body tensed as he eyed one block with a fearful intensity. "No way," he breathed, low and wavering. It was a whisper born of awe and darkness, a knowledge that gnawed at the edges of his mind. With trembling steps, he climbed onto the mounds of blocks, his talons scraping against their surfaces, his gaze fixed as the wind whipped around him, carrying the sharp tang of salt and decay. "But in the wild," he whispered, his voice trailing off as if the thought was too much to bear. He moved forward, passing a series of pillars stretching from the sands, ancient remnants of a forgotten time. One pillar stood taller than the rest, its surface adorned with a glowing molecular bond, pulsing in tandem with the crashing waves, alive, its rhythm merging with Bezel's own heart. "We could blaze another, oh captain," he growled, voice gruff, almost bitter. He staggered forward, his body driven by a primal compulsion that surged from deep within, growing with every step, every word. "Adapt or die, adapt or die." The chant continued, his words fading into the mist drawn into the fabric of the night. As he walked, a chill swept over him, cutting through his wet feathers and pressing into his bones. A faint whisper echoed in the wind, distant and ethereal. Bezel's eyes widened, and he glanced skyward, breathless. "Ooh, a whisper," he murmured, his gaze fixed on the heavens, a distant and unyielding void. "Is that you, Cor?" In answer, or perhaps in warning, a colossal flower bloomed in the sky, its petals wide and monstrous, a central maw snapping shut in a blink before vanishing, devouring the stars. Bezel's feathers ruffled with unease, the brief sight sending a chill skittering down his spine. "A map," he muttered, spotting something half buried in the sand. He reached down, brushing the grains away to reveal a soaked, tattered map. Its surface shifted under his gaze, slowly revealing an image of himself alone on a forsaken path. A shudder passed through him, his grip tightening. Adapt or die, he murmured, his voice barely audible over the crashing waves. Adapt or die. The wreckage of a sunken ship loomed ahead, its shattered timbers jutting from the sand curling into the shape of broken bones. The ancient wood creaked, a haunting sound that rose and fell with the wind. He stepped over the ship's remains, his wet coat snagging on a rusted hook, tugging him back. The hull groaned a melancholy lament, demanding he stay. How long have I been swimming? He muttered softly with a weariness that spoke of endless wandering. The dialectic whispers of feathers and grace, he murmured, his words trailing off into a hum. The beaded stones, the true. A triangular lizard darted across his path, its sharp head and vibrant frills flaring in the wind, its presence an oddity amidst the desolation. Beazle regarded it with a low croak, a faint glimmer of recognition. Coin, ack, mountain, he muttered, his voice softer and more tender. He moved on, urgency building in his steps, as if time were running out, slipping through his talons, falling as grains of sand fall to the ocean floor. Sloppy destruction, he growled with frustration. Ack, bug, oak, lock and key, nexus book. A massive gate loomed before him, its shape twisted into the form of a monstrous maw, jagged and intimidating. It snapped shut behind him as he passed through, yet he strode on, oblivious and driven. I knew you would come around, he sneered, a hint of defiance in his voice. No box can hold me. He found himself on a vast platform, an arena of sorts, surrounded by towering pillars. Eyes were carved into their surfaces, unblinking, their gaze following his every move. Beazle stopped, transfixed, his breath shallow, hypnotized. Click! Metapaths, layered thread, he murmured, reaching out, fingers stretching towards an unseen force, something beyond his grasp. Creates a path. Adapt or die. A small canoe appeared along the far edge of the platform, drifting quietly, waiting for him. He stepped into it, letting the current take him, his voice softened, reverent. Adapt or die. The river guided him to a floating iceberg, the surface adorned with glowing sigils, vein-like, pulsed in the moonlight. He climbed aboard, his steps careful, each movement measured. He drifted towards the shore, his voice rising into a rhythmic melody of resolve. Ack, crate, train, repeat. A twisted tree appeared on the horizon, its branches heavy with bomb berries, their matte blue skins taut with the promise of explosive flavor. He plucked one, his beak cutting into the flesh as he took a bite. An eruption of flavor hit him, and the barnacles on his beak sizzled briefly, tiny sparks flaring into the surrounding darkness. Ack, he croaked, amused. He slipped into a tunnel, the path dipping below the surface, sinking him into the world beneath the waves. The underwater realm unfolded around him, a kingdom of shadows and flickering blue candles, their flames casting eerie, wavering light. He stepped forward. Each motion was slow and deliberate. The dark book in his hand felt heavier here, pulsing with life, its secrets urging him on. Adapt or die, he whispered, determination hardening his gaze. His eyes narrowed as he moved towards a single candle, isolated from the rest, its flame steady. Slow down, he hissed, his voice quietly seething. Attack! A geyser erupted in the distance, spewing chaotic strings of energy into the water. Voidfish, spectral embers swam around it, illuminating the abyss with strange electric hues. The sight filled him with deep-seated resolve. Deeper, he murmured, his glass eye gleaming, fixed on the endless dark on the horizon. His words faded into the void, swallowed by the depths as he stepped forward, disappearing into the darkness.